The NHL and the NHLPA have finally released a full document to their new collective bargaining agreement, which will take place from 2026 to 2030. Today, we're going to review all the final confirmed details that we need to know as fans coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at the actual fully released document of the collective bargaining agreement agreed to by the NHL and the NHLPA that will take effect next season in 2026 and will last at least until 2030. So we're guaranteed NHL and NHLPA labor peace for another 5 years. Of course, this agreement was agreed to 1 full year early before the current CBA even expires. So the upcoming season that will start this fall for the 25-26 season will still fall under the other previous agreement, and this new agreement will kick in the following year for 26, 27 up to 2030. So a lot of these details we've touched on before, which were rumored to be included. Now we can confirm some of those details and elaborate a little bit further on some of these items as well. For example, let's get started with some of the stuff around player contracts. League minimum salary is going to be increasing. It will increase every year during the 4 years of the collective bargaining agreement. Of course, right now it's $775, and the first year of this agreement will go to $850. Then it will go to $900, and then $950 and $1 million. So by 2030, the league minimum salary will be $1 million. We'll see a $50,000 increase every season. Of course, contract terms, as we had talked about before, rumored to be dropping by 1 year, depending on if you're staying with your existing club or going into free agency. Right now, max term is 8 years. That'll drop down to 7. And if you do go into free agency and change teams, instead of 7 years, it'll drop down to 6 years. So that'll be effective then. That's not a big shocker. That was one of the details that was definitely accurate with all the speculation from before. ELC salaries are going to be changing as well when this new agreement kicks in. The minimum salary will increase to $1 million. Right now it's usually around $925. So that's going to go to $1 million. And then every year after that, it's going to go to league minimum plus $175,000. So we know league minimum is going to be changing every year of this agreement by $50K. So it'll change for the entry-level contracts as well. League minimum plus $175 for that. Of course, qualifying offers for restricted free agents will be obviously changing a little bit as well. Nothing too crazy with that. The qualifying offers will be, if your salary is $1.25 million or less, then the qualifying offer due at the expiry of the contract will be 110% of the salary of the previous contract. If the salary ranges from $1.25 million to $1.75 million, it'll be 105% of the contract of the previous salary, up to a maximum of $1.75 million. And anything above $1.75 million, the qualifying offer would be 100%. Of course, we're going to get a lot of structuring changes as well when it comes to signing bonuses and how things can be structured that way. We know some teams like to really front load contracts and pay a heavy amount of salaries, because right now, basically, the minimum salary in each year of the contract can be as low as the league minimum, with the remainder being paid out as a signing bonus if the team and player agree to that. That's going to change. That's difficult for a lot of smaller market teams to do. So now signing bonuses are going to be limited to a maximum of 60% of the total value of the contract, and the breakdown from year to year could be like a maximum of 20% variance from year one. So, for example, we saw a couple of contracts just signed in this year's free agent market that, based on these new rules, would not be allowed, and those contracts would have been rejected and need to be restructured. Of course, they'll be grandfathered in because the rules weren't effective yet when these were signed. But, for example, the new contract signed just a few weeks ago between the New York Rangers and defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov would be rejected by these new rules. The Gavrikov deal has one of the highest year in the contract, has a $9 million payout, whereas the lowest is 5.4. So that's more than a 20% variance that would not be allowed in the new contract. And like the Mitch Marner contract that he just signed with Vegas, I guess he signed it with Toronto and traded to Vegas. So that 8-year contract that Marner just signed would also not be cap compliant, either CBA compliant, I should say. He would not be allowed because it is so heavy in signing bonuses that it's more than the 60% maximum of the value. So obviously those are a couple of contracts that were done now. They're totally legal, but under this new format in the new CBA would not be allowed. Some changes around draft rights as well. We've already talked about a little bit about that before. So right now with draft rights, it's going to be central or standardized across the board. So it's not going to matter so much where players are coming from. But right now when they're drafted, if they're drafted at age 18, the rights are going to expire 4 years later on June 1st. If they're drafted at age 19, it'll be 3 years later on June 1st. And if they're coming from the NCAA, then their rights will expire 30 days after they leave school. So essentially you get the 4 years that they can stay in school, and then you tack on an extra 30 days after that, and that's when those signing rights would expire. Another big thing as well, starting in 26-27, any players entering the league that have 0 games of NHL experience will be mandated and required to wear neck protection. So the neck guards, and there is standards within the neck guards, what is acceptable or not. Of course, all other players will be grandfathered in. We're starting to see some older players that have been around a while wear them, which is great to see. But players beginning their careers, playing their first games in 26-27, moving forward will all be required piece of equipment to have to participate in NHL games. As we mentioned as well, we knew that teams were going to have a full-time EBUG or emergency backup goaltender. That indeed is in the CBA. There is some requirements for that role as well. To be a full-time EBUG, they have to have fully available schedule, so they have to be available to the teams in all 82 games or 84 games, because this is going to be changing as well. The schedule will increase from 82 to 84 games. That's been confirmed as part of this, so they have to be always available. So that's one big thing. They can't have conflicting schedules with other commitments or other jobs that they might hold. They also can't have played any pro hockey in the last 3 years, and they have to have a maximum of 80 pro games under their full resume here, but that cannot be NHL games. They can't have played in the NHL before. So no NHL games on a standard player contract, maximum 80 pro games of all other leagues combined, and no pro games in the past 3 years in order to qualify to be an NHL emergency backup goaltender. Also, what we had heard from Frank Saravalli the other day is a speculation, which is still rumored here, because this is one thing in the CBA that's based on my understanding of it, is not 100% confirmed, but the NHL has agreed to work with the CHL to make this happen. Each NHL team will be allowed to have one player aged 19 be in the American Hockey League. So, of course, we know right now if you're still junior eligible within the CHL, you have to play in the CHL if you're not on an NHL roster. Well, the NHL is working with the CHL to change that so that there can be an exception for one player for each NHL franchise to also play in the American Hockey League if they deem that to be the better opportunity for their development. Of course, we already heard about the dress code. That definitely is in here 100%. No NHL teams will be permitted to impose any type of dress code on their players. No players are going to be allowed to have any endorsements or sponsorships with any companies that involve tobacco or cannabis. We also got some changes around emergency recalls and around post-trade trade deadline call-ups. Of course, in the past, teams were allowed a maximum of 4 call-ups after the NHL trade deadline. That is changing. It's going to go from 4 to 5, but there is one additional rule to that now, is that you can have a maximum of 4 recalls on your roster at one time. So you can't have all 5 players that have been recalled after the deadline on your roster or in your lineup at the same time. The revenue split is still 50-50 amongst the players in the NHL league owners. That's still no change in that regard whatsoever. Emergency recalls does have a change to it as well. Right now, of course, you do still have to play short, so you have to play one game, one player short before you can qualify to get an emergency recall. But players that are eligible to fall into that category can be players making upwards of $375,000 above the league minimum in order to be qualified to be a player on emergency recall. Of course, salary retention was another topic that we discussed before. There's not going to be allowed to be double salary retention at the same time. There is going to be a requirement that any contract to have a second salary retention done on it has to have at least 75 regular season days in between that happening. So a contract can be traded with salary retained. It can't happen again on that same contract until 75 regular season days have passed. So you're not going to see that as much, but with the increases in salary cap, that really shouldn't be as much of an issue moving forward. Paper loans, so paper players being sent to the minors strictly on paper, which we've seen before, where they'd be sent down on off days basically to help them accrue more salary cap space, is not going to be allowed anymore. If a player is actually sent down on paper, they have to report. So you can't, because that would happen a lot. Players would be sent down on paper. Teams would tell them not to worry about going down because they're only going down for their off days. That can't be. They do have to go down and report for at least a day before they can be recalled. So I would imagine we'll probably still see some of that, but it's going to be a little bit less with that. And the other thing with that as well is that, of course, they're not paid NHL salary when they're sent down. So it saves NHL teams a little bit of money, takes a little bit of money out of players' pockets, which I'm sure the PA was arguing to keep in their favor here as well. European free agents coming over to play in the NHL, if their age is 25 to 27, will no longer be required to sign an entry-level contract for the first year. However, they still will be bound by other ELC rules, the same as other North American players. We do have as well mid-season PTOs, so one rule around that, mid-season PTOs will be allowed. Players can sign for up to 10 days on a professional tryout, and the team that they signed with wouldn't have first right of refusal on any NHL contract. So if a player signs a PTO with a team and it's a 10-day period, another team tries to sign them, then that team that has them on the PTO can say, no, we're going to offer the same contract and keep the player. Performance bonuses, of course, right now for players that are obviously on ELCs, they can earn bonuses. Players over the age of 35, like we saw a few deals this summer, Claude Giroux, Jonathan Taves, etc., getting deals like that. Patrick Kane, another one. But there is going to be some changes to other players who can get those. Now, of course, there was some, this is not completely new here, just a little bit of change to it. So players under the age of 35 that would have had to have spent at least 100 days of the previous season on injured reserve or the final 70 days of the regular season on injured reserve and played a maximum of 2 playoff games. So that part is a little bit different from before. So that's obviously, like we saw a player like Connor Brown, for example, a couple of years back when he first went to Edmonton. He got a 1-year deal with a bunch of bonuses in it. He's under the age of 35, but the year before he played with Washington. Only played like about 2 or 3 or 4 games or something like that, and then he blew out his knee. He was out on IR the rest of the season, so he qualified to do a contract with bonuses built in. So he took a lower salary with a bonus structure. Now, of course, the big one everybody was really most curious about was how the LTIR changes would be effective and how it would affect the new playoff salary cap. So essentially, here's how it's going to work. We now know this for certainty, no more guesswork around this, because we've heard lots of speculation around it. But essentially, when a player goes on long-term injury reserve, it's not going to be their contract that's going to be used for the relief that the team gets during the regular season. It's all going to be based on league average salary. So, for example, you can have a player making $2 million and they go in LTIR. Well, they can spend as much as the league average salary to go above that to replace that player during the regular season. Same goes for a player making $9 or $10 million. It's not going to matter in that regard. League average salary last year was $3.8 million. So obviously, if you go with the law of averages, you're going to have players below, some players above, but it all will level out, and the same as kind of the rationale behind this. So essentially, when a player goes on long-term injured reserve, that is how it's going to work. Now, there are exceptions to that. So if a team loses a player to a significant, severe injury, and there's absolute certainty that they will not be back at all during the playoffs either, they can appeal to the league to have their full salary be available for LTIR. So let's say it's a bigger salaried player making $5, $6, $7, $8 million, and, well, they're going to be gone for the entire year, no chance of coming back in the playoffs, then they can appeal to the league, and they will likely give them an exception on that case. So that's how it'll work during the regular season. Now, when you get to the playoffs, how it's going to work is that every game you play, your lineup has to be cap compliant. So what they're going to do, essentially, is if the regular season salary cap had any dead money, so we're talking about money that was tied to a previous buyout or a performance bonus overage or really anything else, like, a salary retention, anything like that that counted during the regular season is going to count during the playoffs. So let's say you had $3 million between buyouts, performance bonuses, and salary retention on your cap. So in the last year's cap was $88 million. Well, so your lineup can be a maximum of $85 million in salary on any given playoff game. And of course, if you have players on your team that have salary retention or anything, whatever their cap hit is for you in the regular season is what it will count as during the playoffs. So essentially, you can't add an extra high profile, big money player like we've seen before, and then have that player that they've replaced on the regular season come back, then get them both in the playoffs and have a much more expensive lineup than you'd ever be allowed to have in the regular season. So that should cut things like that down from happening so much. So, for example, I know Puckpedia, of course, great resource, great website, went through this new CBA rule and they looked at a lot of things. And one of the big things they looked at was the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers from this year's Stanley Cup Final and examined how they would compare with these new playoff cap rules. The Edmonton Oilers Game 6 roster that played in the last game of the NHL season when the Panthers won the Cup, their on-ice salary cap totaled $74 million. And then, of course, they had some dead space between buyouts and bonus overages. So their total cap counting dead space was $80.6 million. So they're $7.5 million basically under the cap. Now, the Panthers, on the other hand, their on-ice lineup in Game 6 when they won the Cup had a cap hit of players only of $91.279 million. They also had dead cap space as well, which would have taken them up to $93 million. So, huge difference between what Florida had in their cap versus Edmonton had this rule been in effect last season. So, clearly, that's kind of why the rule is changing, to make things more even and to make a more even level playing field from that regard. So that's how the new playoff salary cap will work. It's probably one of the bigger items here all in all. I must say, for the most part, I think the owners got a lot of, I don't see the players really getting a lot of wins in this new agreement. We know that the Olympics are still going to be taking place with the player participant. So that's going to go for 2026 and 2030. We know there's going to be a World Cup of Hockey, which is great as well. But all in all, not a lot of wins, I don't think, for the players. But the good thing is regardless of who you think won, they get the better end of the bargain here. We get labor peace for an extended period of time in the NHL, preventing any work stoppages, which is phenomenal, great for fans to make sure we don't have to deal with that. So let me know your thoughts on this new CBA now that it's all confirmed. I'll link down below how you can look in the pinned comment if you want to have a full look at the document. It's really long. It's really extensive. I did a lot of reading today, plus relied on some experts like Puckpedia for interpretation on a few points here, so check it out if you want, and we'll certainly be back. Plenty more videos talking about all the other news and rumors around the NHL. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.